Hi everyone, it's me, Sandy Cruz of Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. For years now, I've been bringing to you conversations about wellness from experts from all over the world. Whether it be suggestions in how you can age better, biohacking, alternative wellness, these are conversations to help you live your best life. I want to live a long, healthy, and vibrant life. Never mind all those stigmas that as we reach midlife and beyond, we're just going to shrivel up and die with some horrible disease. Always remember, balanced living works. I really look forward to this season. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new season. I always start my seasons in September. I don't know why. It just feels like it's a new year to me. Kids go back to school. I don't know. Just feels like it. So welcome to season 4/5 of Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. I'm still at it, you guys. Today, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Morgan Nolte all about insulin resistance. This is a big thing, a big issue, a big problem, especially in North America. So I'm very happy to bring this conversation to you. So you'll have to listen to all of it and definitely share it with somebody else who might benefit. Now, although Morgan is younger than myself, as a woman in menopause without a thyroid, I have a very different perspective on insulin resistance because, a lot of people think, oh, well, my mom never had diabetes, my dad never had diabetes, so I won't get it. And remember, insulin resistance is connected to a higher likelihood or propensity for heart disease, type 2 diabetes, stroke. And this is why it's so important. And we will break down what it means, but your risks really go up as soon as you reach menopause. Why is that? Because our estrogen starts to decline, and that estrogen actually helps to modulate insulin sensitivity. It also helps with energy balance, body composition. But guess what else comes into play? Thyroid. Now, I will mention to everyone that I'm sure you know this, but I did release the Essential Thyroid Guide this year. And it is not a clinical book. I am not a doctor, but it is a patient advocacy guide that can just help you to understand how to optimize thyroid, because thyroid is another thing that can go off around menopause. And guess what? If you are hypothyroid, that actually puts you at a greater risk as well for insulin resistance. So this is a very important conversation. This season, as with every season, I've got some incredible discussions. I am going to be having a discussion with Dr. E all about fibromyalgia. I have a holistic veterinarian coming. I have Sigmar Berg of Love Tuner. I'm actually going to have DNA Connections come on, and we are going to talk all about what was found in it's almost 19 years that this root canal was in my mouth, and what we actually found from DNA testing of the root and the tooth and everything that was extracted. I've got NMN. Everybody's talking about NMN. Wonderfeel will be coming. Susan Bratton will be coming to talk all about sexual health at midlife. Please ensure you hit follow on my show wherever it is that you're listening. That ensures that you're going to get every episode delivered to you however you do listen. And please don't forget to share this, because this is how I keep getting more and more fabulous guests. And I'm going into 4 or 5 years of doing this. I am going to say It hasn't been an easy run. And I'm going to talk about this now for a second because I compete with the Maniverse. Yeah, I call it the Maniverse. It is a group of men in the wellness space. And they've got huge audiences and it's wonderful, but they speak a lot about wellness from a man's perspective. I provide a more unique perspective, and that is of a woman's going through menopause without a thyroid. So, this is why I would ask that you just continue to share my podcast and also rate it and review it with a few words if you are able to do that. I know through Apple you can. When you do that, it just helps me to be found. So I would greatly appreciate that. And follow me on all of my social media channels. It's Sandy K Nutrition everywhere. Also follow me on Substack. This is a platform for writers and journalists. Here is where I explore all topics relating to body, mind, spirit, soul, wellness from a very different perspective that's not telling you how it is. It's more of an exploration. I also reveal a lot of protocols on my Substack that are for prevention and just to help us age better. And now, with that, let's cut on through to this interview with Dr. Morgan Nolte, all about insulin resistance. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have Dr. Morgan Nolte. She is a board-certified clinical specialist in geriatric physical therapy, recognizing a lack of preventative education. Seems I talk about that a lot these days, and care that focused on reversing risk factors instead of just treating symptoms. Dr. Nolte founded, I'm going to say it in Croatian. Can I?
Please do. I love that.
Živili. Because when her and I had a little chat beforehand, I'm like, Zivli. I'm like, that sounds like the Croatian word that we use when we're cheering. Like, we have živili, like life, vibrancy, and there is a connection, which is amazing. I love the name of your
Thanks.
business. And she founded Živili or Zivli, an online course and coaching program that helps adults reverse insulin resistance for long-term weight loss and disease prevention. And most of you know over the last few years who have been following me, I'm also a certified metabolic balance coach, and insulin resistance is a big focus for me because it's something that is preventable. Like people automatically go, oh, well, now I have diabetes, so, I couldn't do anything. And so I think conversations like this are extremely important because there's so much that you can do. And today, Dr. Nolte and I are going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it is, what are the risk factors, how can we prevent it, and so on. And so, with that, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
I'm excited to be here. It'll be a fun conversation.
I think so. And I always need to start with your experience. Why? Why is this a focus for you?
Yeah, well, a lot of reasons. I think, first of all, I'm a geriatric physical therapist by trade, which means really specializing in the treatment of adults 55 plus. Sorry for those of you who are 50.
Hold on a second. Lady, I'm 54. I certainly don't consider myself geriatric.
I know.
But apparently I can get a discount at the drugstore in a year because I will be. And it just kind of blows my mind. But
And which is awesome. I think like you're such a shining example of how well people can age and how growing older doesn't mean growing unhealthy.
yeah.
However, that's what I saw a lot in geriatric physical therapy. I treated a lot of diabetes, heart disease, dementia, arthritis, falls, and it was heartbreaking. To be matter of fact about it, it was exhausting. I burnt out. emotionally, physically, mentally, because I felt like we were doing too little too late to help these people. And we were spending so much money and so much time and so many resources treating disease reactively. And I thought, man, I really wish I could have worked with these people 20 years earlier because so much more could have been done to prevent these conditions in the first place. Now that kind of was the spark to light my interest in disease prevention. But then a couple other factors played into it as well. I felt like both of my parents really fell in this gray zone of healthcare. My dad's a type 2 diabetic. I think his A1C was like 9, something really high when he found out, just all of a sudden. And then he, had to start taking medication. It runs in my family. Great grandparents had amputations. My mom was not that healthy. She didn't have diabetes, but um, definitely was not at optimal metabolic health. And I just didn't want to go down that road. And it also felt like, who is serving people like my parents? Who is serving people who are being overlooked or gaslit by the traditional medical system and told, oh, just watch it for now. It's not that big of a deal. And I think that we are doing a big disservice when we aren't proactive with metabolic health. And a beautiful example of this that I like to give is just, can you imagine if, you've had cancer before? I like to use the example of breast cancer, just the one I like to use. So let's say you go to your doctor and they find a lump and they're like, oh, you're probably fine. We're just going to watch it for now and we'll retest it in 6 months. That would be maddening. But that's what we do all the time for prediabetes. Blood sugar levels that are not in the optimal range. We tell people just watch it for now, cut back on the sugar, and we don't actually do anything to treat it. A lot of doctors in America just wait until the problem gets bad enough and then they can prescribe them a medication that the patient didn't want in the first place. And then they have no education on how to get off the medication. And so I just felt like we're in this sick cycle. And I wanted to do more to help people prevent these conditions so that they could be like my grandparents. So we had eight out of 9 of our grandparents present at our wedding, which is pretty amazing.
That's amazing.
And our grandparents, really influenced our lives. They influenced our values. They influenced our faith. And I think that grandparents play such a pivotal role in the lives of their children and their grandchildren and their great grandchildren if they have the health to be able to be actively engaged in that. And so my passion is really to help people age well so that they can be a positive influence on their children and their grandchildren and live the retirement they want and not spend their energy and their money and their time at the doctor's office or getting surgeries or taking prescriptions that could have been prevented.
You have many, many good reasons for sure
Yeah.
to
The
do.
line behind me says, keep your eye on your why. And
Yeah.
it's like, I have such a strong why for why I want to help people prevent diabetes
Yeah.
specifically.
Well, my parents are 87 and my mom will be 78. And I'm grateful and thankful that they're still around. They're still in their own home. I mean, they're not perfect, but, they're aging well. And if I can only achieve what they've achieved so far, I'd be pretty happy. So
That's great.
let's start with what insulin resistance actually means, because I don't think people really understand the term. And maybe what we can do is start with what is insulin and start with that because people don't get it, that it's such an important hormone and it's like signaling constantly, right? So I think we need to get into that first because I want people to really understand how important insulin is to doing what it needs to do in our body. So I'm going to let you take that away.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I don't want people to tune this out because they don't think it's not applicable to them.
Yep.
That's something that I've learned from being in business for all these years now is I was talking about insulin resistance till I was blue in the face because I knew it was causing their problem. But people didn't resonate with that because their doctor wasn't talking with them about it. There's not a lot of information about it online yet. And it was going right over their heads because they were like, Oh, it's kind of like if you're looking at a row of houses and you're looking for, the green door, and you just like that's what they were looking for. They were looking for information on blood sugar, prediabetes. And I was talking about this red door over here of insulin resistance and nobody got it.
Hmm.
But I think that it's becoming more and more common to talk about it. And I want people to know if you have high blood sugar, if you have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, if you have high triglycerides or excess belly fat, if you have high blood pressure, you likely have insulin resistance, which is causing all of these things. So I just wanted to start there so that people could understand, like, is this applicable to me? So insulin is a hormone made in your pancreas, and it has a lot of different jobs in the body. The two that I talk about most often are going to be blood sugar regulation and fat creation and storage. But a third and very important function of insulin is essentially telling your body what to do with the food that you eat. So, are we going to be building muscle? Are we going to be building bone? Are we going to be storing it as fat? Insulin is kind of that master metabolic signaler to tell your body what to do with the food that you eat. So, when you eat a meal, like let's say pasta, that has a lot of carbohydrates, all of the glucose found in that pasta is going to quickly break down in your bloodstream and cause a blood sugar spike, right? Because all the glucose is there. So, what happens is your pancreas shoots out a burst of insulin so that the insulin can bind to cell receptors. And what happens then is I call it like a little tube slide, and goes up to the cell membrane. The glucose can slide down into the cells. That's going to fill up the liver glycogen and the muscle glycogen first, and then any excess glucose is going to be shuffled off to fat storage, especially if you're not like using it right away. So that's one reason that I say insulin is the blood sugar regulating hormone, right? So when your blood sugar goes up, if you're not moving your body and using your muscles to use that glucose, your insulin also goes up to get the blood sugar out of the bloodstream and into your cells to be stored or used for energy. And that's also why it's called the fat creation and storage hormone, because any excess, nutrients that you have, if insulin levels are high, will be kind of shuffled off into storage. And it doesn't take a lot, especially if you don't have a lot of muscle mass, to shuffle off those um, excess glucose molecules to fat storage. So that's insulin. That's what insulin is. Now, insulin resistance happens over time. This is not something that happens overnight. This takes decades to develop, which is very important for prevention. And it's when your cells become resistant to the effects of insulin, which means it's resistant to the blood sugar lowering effects. I like to say it's, similar to an alcoholic's resistance where they used to get a buzz after 2 drinks, but then it takes 4 drinks and then it takes 6 drinks to get that same buzz-like effect. Well, it used to take a little bit of insulin to get your blood sugars back down to a normal range. Then it was a medium amount of insulin, and then it's a lot of insulin. And eventually your pancreas can't keep up. And that is when we start to see rising blood sugar levels. And what I really like to explain to people is that if you test your fasting insulin, you're going to have a 10 to 20-year heads up on your diabetes, on prediabetes. So, fasting insulin has been shown in the research to predict high blood sugar levels 10 to 20 years before people see a rise in that fasting glucose or a rise in their hemoglobin A1C, which is a 3-month estimate of their blood sugar levels. And most physicians do not test insulin. And that's
No.
why I'm so passionate about educating people of the importance of get your own insulin test. You can do it. I don't know about Canada, but we do ship our at-home insulin test around the world. But they also may have options to go to a lab. Do you guys have those options in Canada?
We have at-home testing that we can order ourselves that actually have multiple biomarkers, and A1C, insulin, and glucose are all part of that you could do at your kitchen table with high accuracy, just like going to a regular lab. So,
So we
yeah.
can get it done, at least in the States, there's a lot of resistance that I hear from physicians. So when I ask people, hey, Go ask your doctor for an
Yeah,
insulin.
no, same in Canada. It's hard to get. It is hard in Canada and in the US, depending on who you're going to in the US, of course, because there's way more functional medicine physicians in the US than there are in Canada. It's very hard to get all the blood work that you actually need for prevention,
Mhm.
right? It's more about like, don't tell me when I'm already sick. Tell me before so I could do something about it. Because there's so many lifestyle changes that you can make to prevent a diagnosis, which is why we're talking today, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
so here's a question for you. And I don't know what you think about this, but I am a big believer in bioindividuality. I believe that how things will affect your body will be different than how they affect my body. You come into epigenetics. There's so many factors that come into play that can possibly determine whether somebody can get diagnosed with a disease or not. So, years ago, my HbA1c shot up in a matter of from February being about a 5.5 HbA1c to October 6.1. I know I'm jumping ahead, but because you mentioned those metrics, I wanted to stop there and just say, this is how quickly things can change, especially when your body is going through changes. And the big change for me was I was starting to have menopausal symptoms of hot flashes. So, like, I just wanted to pause and say, if you are going through major life transitions, whether it's extreme stress, extreme cases like some women have menopausal symptoms worse than others. Maybe that's a time for you to do blood work more often.
Yeah, and modify the strategy. I think that's a really important conversation where I'm guessing your diet didn't really change a lot between the 5.5 and the 6.1.
Not at all. So I'm going to tell you. So during that time, there's the thumbs up. During that time, I I am a registered holistic nutritionist, right? So I eat very healthy, I eat very clean, but it was more about how I was eating that didn't work for my body anymore. And it actually created very sudden change in my body. I did notice exactly what you said. Like all of a sudden, I'm like, what's going on with my belly? Like, why is my midsection all of it? And I'm like, huh. And, I had a personal trainer at the time and we would talk about it. I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I just didn't understand it. And so I love that you mention these symptoms that come well before you become a diabetic. And when you take note, you can do something about it.
Mhm. Speaking to the belly fat too and why that happens, maybe we can dig into that. But
Sure.
before we do that, I kind of wanted to glean a little bit more from your experience. You said it wasn't necessarily what I was eating, it was how I was eating. And my mind actually went to sleep because you said you were having hot flashes. And I didn't know if those were happening when you were sleeping and really disrupting your sleep.
So, because like you, I analyzed all of the factors. So, yes, sleep was one. So, sleep was definitely, I was having issues sleeping because I'd get the hot flashes at night. But the other thing that you're going to probably find so interesting is I was listening to what I call the Maniverse, all the big names of what is healthy and what is not. And this is why I speak for women specifically, that just because so and so, who's a mass name in the wellness industry, says to do something, it doesn't mean it's applicable for you. I was intermittent fasting, Morgan.
Interesting.
But guess what?
Yeah, what happened?
So this is why I'm like, ladies, if you're listening, make sure it makes sense to you and it resonates with you. So I would intermittent fast every day until, I don't know, 11:30. I would often work out fasted, completely fasted. Um, and then what would happen, you know how with traditional intermittent fasting, if you're doing a 16-8, you would have an 8-hour eating window. Well, during that time, I was eating, 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 eating. And I know you're going to have something to say about that, right?
So you were just like constantly eating throughout the 8 hours?
Well, yeah, I was starving. I was starving. And so if you can, and I think that's an important thing to note, and I'm sure you're going to agree. If you can't, you have a satiating lunch and a satiating dinner, but you're starving, there's something going on with your insulin. Would you agree with that, Morgan?
Yeah, and maybe cortisol as well.
Yeah.
So that sleep deprivation that you're experiencing because of the hot flashes, a couple of things happen. Chronic stress, first of all, releases elevated levels of cortisol. And cortisol is not a bad thing. Like our cortisol is higher right now because we need to be alert and functioning, all the things we need to do to execute on this podcast.
Right.
However, when your cortisol goes up, what that signals your body is get ready. You're gonna have to fight or flee your work here. And so your blood sugar goes up. Well, if you're not fighting or fleeing, if you're just laying in bed and you're not sleeping, the blood sugar goes up. The muscles are not sucking that blood sugar into them. So insulin has to go up. When your insulin goes up, remember that over time, that's going to contribute to insulin resistance and more fat storage. So that's one thing I think that was going on. However, the secondary hormonal effects of sleep deprivation really affect appetite. They increase feelings of hunger when you're sleep deprived. They make fasting much more difficult.
Yep.
And sleep deprivation and stress, cortisol specifically, increases NPY, which is a substance that makes you preferentially crave carbohydrates, that boost of energy. And so whenever someone's really sleep deprived, I'm like, now is not the time to intermittently fast because it's going to be harder and you're kind of adding one hormetic stress on top of another. And so I think that's one thing to consider if people are going through perimenopause and menopause and they're really, really struggling with their blood sugar or their weight. Often it's not so much to do with the food. Sometimes, a lot of times it is, but we also have to be very mindful about our stress management and really good sleep habits because that's going to make following through on any intermittent fasting or nutrition goals that you have a lot more doable.
Hmm. And so the way that I've always liked to describe this for at least for a menopausal woman is you have to listen and go inward on what your body really, really needs in terms of your food too. And it's not about like what you were saying, these carb cravings. Well, that's going to happen if you're not sleeping enough. It's almost like you have to prioritize certain lifestyle factors first, and then all other things can come into play. So now, what I've learned, and it's almost 2 years of being stable in my weight, so long as I can keep the sleep and the hot flashes in check. I eat 3 meals a day and I no longer fast. It just doesn't resonate with me. The only fast I do is an overnight 12-hour. And it really has changed the entire trajectory of what was going on. And I'm not saying to anybody who's listening to this podcast that this is definitively something you should do. What I'm saying is that especially as women, it's really important to figure out what is your solution because it's going to be different. So, please stop listening to, these 45-year-old men who think that, what they're saying is the be all end all. You must look to yourself, especially around perimenopause or menopause, because a lot of things can really go off the rails, let's just say.
Mhm. And going back to kind of the eating constantly during the 8 hours, and I find that portions are getting harder and harder to control these days from our environment. It's like, first off, if you're eating all the time, you're constantly raising your insulin levels, you're constantly putting kind of a strain on your digestive system. We really want that, 4-ish hour break between meals so that we can digest our food and kind of get ready for the next meal. But what are your thoughts on this? Because I'm a proponent of intermittent fasting. At a minimum, 12 to 14 hours a day. I think that's a really, really great level for everybody to start at. 12 hours
Yes.
a day, 7 to 7, whatever you want to do. For some people, they stay there. And it really is, it's bioindividuality. It depends on your goals, it depends on your hormone status, your sleep, your stress, your psychology. What a lot of people with like eating disorders, for example, it's not going to be a strategy that we recommend. And it can kind of trigger rebound eating, overeating. But for myself personally, I find that intermittent fasting has been a really good weight loss tool, almost like a stepping stone. So I'll kind of have seasons like where I'm fasting and then I'm maintaining, fasting, maintaining. And that just has worked better for me. But like you said, it depends on the person and the season of life. But whenever I fast, I do think it's a really good reset for my relationship with food. Like, I don't know about you, but there are so many little habits that we have that contribute to overeating, that contribute to insulin resistance, that contribute to excess weight. And I'm just going to tell you the ones that I've been working on over the last several years. Not eating when I am making a meal, like just having, half a meal while I'm making a meal.
Yes.
Not finishing my kids' that's a big one. Not finishing my kids' foods, which goes back to the belief that was instilled in me as a little girl. Clean your plate. Don't finish,
Me
don't
too.
waste food. Yes.
Me
Yeah, all
too.
these things that people are like kind of subconsciously overlooking, like they're just an ingrained belief, and we haven't taken time to question those. The other one is not going back for seconds. That was, I think, in my mind, a big limiting thought that I had for a long time was um, low insulin calories. It's low insulin, so it doesn't matter. It's like low insulin calories are still calories. If you have body composition or weight loss goals, you still have to watch the energy intake, even if it's from olive oil or, non-starchy vegetables. And so fasting for me has been the most effective way to just reset that relationship with food. Totally do like a little reset of the habits so that when I like when I start eating again, I'm like, okay, this is a reasonable portion size. Okay, let's practice not going back for seconds. Okay, let's figure out a strategy so that you're not eating while you're cooking. And I think that when we're talking about insulin resistance, yes, we have to talk about proper nutrition and fasting appropriately for your body and getting enough sleep and totally managing your stress, right? All of those are very important. But when push comes to shove, it's about the mindset. It's about the psychology of behavior change, because that's ultimately what is going to drive the actions required to prevent and reverse insulin resistance. So I'm very much equally passionate about like the science side of it, like the hard sciences of what does the evidence say, and then also the softer sciences about, all right, what's beneath this behavior. So I don't know. I just think portions are really important, and we have big plates. We're used to big portions, and we're chronically overeating and becoming desensitized to the amount of food that's actually appropriate for our ideal health. What are your thoughts on that?
I have a lot. So I did a lot of behavior. I guess I did some like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy training.
Mhm.
And this may be an interesting story for those of you who are listening. Around the time that I came close to whatever, 6.1, I was insulin resistant. That was my HbA1c, just so I'm clear. I had gone to Sedona before that, and I did a lot of these really heavy spiritual retreats, and they weren't commercialized. It was just very eye-opening. And I call her my spiritual hypnotist. I sat with her for 2 hours and we created a mantra because I'm a big believer. Exactly what you said. It starts with our mindset. So when I was you and I had a good little chat beforehand. When I was 41 and I lost my thyroid, there were a lot of limiting beliefs that were created within me that without a thyroid, I'm always going to have weight problems. Oh my God, how am I going to get through menopause? And sure enough, this insulin resistance issue popped up. And for over a decade, I've been like, okay, I'm going to try this diet, try that diet, try this diet. So, this is why I do think this is an important part of the conversation. I came home from Sedona with this little wooden box that had a crystal on it, and my mantra was in there, and it said, I am thin and I am healthy. So these are the two things that were my wish coming home from Sedona. I When I came home from Sedona, it's not like somebody waved a magic wand and went poof, you're going to be thin and healthy now. I am healthy, but thin, right? I actually, during that time, ended up becoming a certified metabolic balance coach. Something just propelled me to get it done and finish that certification. I lost 4% total body fat. This is in November of 2022. I reduced my metabolic age by, I think it was like 4 years, something like that. I reduced my visceral fat. And so this is why I'm like, throw your numbers only scale away, get a body composition scale, and know those numbers. Because when you see that, you're like, wow. So the mindset was a massive part of it. And then I became a certified coach and I did my own program, but then I changed how I ate. And I've been eating like that for almost 2 years now. And Morgan, it's not work
Right?
because I changed the mindset. And so I love that you mentioned that because when you're resistant to change, we all need to change sometimes habits. And I think, and you know, I just didn't want to go down the road, and we haven't even gone there yet about the diseases that could potentially be waiting for you if you don't manage your insulin in advance.
Mm-hmm. But managing insulin comes down to mindset and habits.
Yes.
And unfortunately, there are a lot of people watching and listening to this episode who think they need a health coach. And really, they need more of like a life coach and a counselor because I have coached so many people, and the topic of conversation will veer off into their spouse is sabotaging them, or they're so stressed out at work and they're so busy. And it's like, I can walk to the 50-yard line, on a football analogy. I can walk to the 50-yard line. I can do my part. I can give you the evidence. I can give you the coaching. I can't do the work for you.
Right.
I can't fix your marriage. I can't make you create work boundaries for yourself. So I think that we really have to make the solution match the cause. And so with insulin resistance, we do talk about diet a lot. We talk about meal timing. We talk about exercise. But I really want to emphasize the stress management piece of it because that's so overlooked and it is so effective to a woman's progress and results. I mean, I don't want to overlook the fact that you went on a retreat to Sedona. You flew to Sedona, Arizona from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
You invested in your mental and your spiritual health.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know
Yeah.
how many women need that pause right now?
Yeah.
So many. And we are afraid to take it. And I think that we have to dig deeper. I love that you're a spiritual person. I am too. And I think that we have to dig deeper and talk about attachments. Have you studied non-attachment at all, non-resistance, non-reaction, non-judgment?
No, go there. Talk to me.
Yeah.
Talk to
So
us.
when it comes to behavior change, I think attachment is a huge one. And going back to that conversation about spousal and work issues that contribute to stress, and they're letting external factors affect their internal state and their internal food choices and activity choices, and they're not fully taking responsibility for their own thoughts and their own actions. And it's a tough place to be. And it can be very difficult to recognize that any disappointment that you're experiencing today is a product of yourself, because disappointment stems from expectations that you have adopted, either expectations that you put on yourself or expectations that you accepted from somebody else on how you should behave, how you should act, what a good wife should do, what a good employee should do, what a good business owner should do. And when we are so attached to the actual or perceived expectations that people have placed on us or that we have placed on ourselves, they're like shackles, and they hold us back from experience, like experimenting with new tech, like strategies. Um, I'm just going to be very practical here.
Yeah.
Attachments, like any habit that you have, is evidence of an attachment. So you become attached to your meal times. You become attached to how full you feel after a meal. You become attached to wanting to keep the peace in a relationship. And so you don't want to have that honest conversation with your spouse about how the relationship can be improved. You become attached to people pleasing and being that best employee and the best boss that you can be. And so you put the needs and wants of other people ahead of your own health. This happens over and over and over and over and over and over again with women, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we practice non attachment, which is huge, you're essentially releasing the expectations. You're releasing the expectation that you're going to lose a certain amount of weight this week or this month, or otherwise you're a failure. You're releasing the expectations, because your spouse, how can your spouse upset you if you have no expectation about how they should or should not show up, how they should or should not treat you? You're not disappointed if you don't have the expectation in the first place. So I think that those spiritual principles come into play when we're talking about behavior change of non-attachment, non-resistance, non-reaction, and non-judgment. I want to touch on non-reaction too. I think you'll like this one.
Okay.
I think a lot of eating is reactive. You're
Oh, 100%. Oh, yeah. I did it last night, Morgan.
Tell me about it.
No, like, and the thing is, and I think you just hit the nail on the head there, because I was really upset with a situation regarding I just had dental surgery, and it's just been a nightmare with this other dentist. Anyway, I got home and I was so angry, and I saw that I just didn't stop eating.
Mhm.
But the difference is, I think there's people who notice, and then there's people who use that and continue that on that trajectory. So the difference was, I was like pissed off, and I was just given a $650 bill for a tooth cleaning. So I was like mad. I felt like I was really, really taken advantage of. And I noticed that I wouldn't stop eating. But then after I was done, I'm like, all right, Sandy, like this is in my own brain. I'm like, I know what you're doing. Like, and then, sometimes guilt can come in. I'm sure you know about that. And I'm like, I'm not going to feel guilty. I am very self-aware of what I just did. I am not going to continue that trajectory. But that was me 100% not, you know, just not being present while I was eating. And so I think a lot of people do that. And then they're causing their own problems and then blaming it. Well, I was upset with this person, and I deserve my, cake after dinner, or I deserve to have a special meal. What do you think? You were kind of starting to get on that.
Absolutely. I think that goes back to non-reaction. So it's okay to be angry. Like I love that two things can be true. You can be angry and you can deal with your anger in a way that doesn't involve food.
Yeah.
you can be sad and deal with your sadness in a way that doesn't involve food. And I think one of the biggest barriers here is just how we've been raised. A lot of children grew up with parents and grandparents who show love through sugar.
Oh, totally.
And so, oh, someone is giving me food, that means they love me. Or, oh, I lost my soccer game, but my mom's going to take me out to ice cream to make me feel better.
Totally.
Or, I got a good grade on a test, and so we're going to go get some brownies for dessert. And so we learn from a very, very young age, these neural circuits wire, and what wires together fires together. So as an adult, when you want to feel loved, when you're upset, when you want a reward, what wires together fires together. So you have that neural circuit of sugar. And it's started at a very young age. And as adults, we have to confront that. And like a computer program, we have to learn how to rewire our brain to think how we want it to think around food and around sugar. And it can be done. And it's really not that difficult. It just takes practice. It takes that daily attention because we are forgetful creatures and we are creatures of habit. And especially when you're learning to reduce your sugar intake, because if we haven't mentioned yet, sugar is like the number one ingredient that will lead to insulin resistance. And refined seed oils is another topic.
Oh, yeah.
But we have some neural circuits to unwire around sugar. And then just going back to your example of the dental bill, like there's a lot that you can unpack there. There was the reaction to the anger. There's attachment to like releasing the money and paying the bill. There's attachment to the expectation of how much a procedure like that should cost. There's the judgment around like what that was actually worth versus what they charged you.
Yeah.
And so there's so many things there to unpack. And I love doing that with people just to help them understand that, oh my gosh, like my reality is solely a product of my mind.
Yes.
And if I'm not happy with something about my reality, that's great news because I can just change how I think and I can learn how to master my mental state and my emotions and I can change my results. But I think that, when you were like the Maniverse, I think you said it was.
Maniverse.
I've not read one book written by a man that talks about mindset.
I know.
I don't know if they don't need it, but I know women need it. And so I think that that's a huge, we like to talk in systems, like you need a system for your nutrition. You need a system for your exercise, your sleep, your stress. You need a mindset system too.
Yes.
And so that's kind of what we like to teach is what is this system of changing the thoughts and what do we do on a daily basis? I'd love to troubleshoot this with you too. So do you have some sort of daily mindset routine to kind of arm you for the day? Because I think that's huge for stress management. That's huge for behavior change. So I'm kind of curious what your daily processes are.
Oh, yeah. I meditate every day, but I use tools. So I've actually, and I do breath work. Have you heard of Love Tuner? Ah, it's just so cool. I've been doing this every day. I didn't do it yesterday though. Anyway,
And by the way, what happened yesterday?
I know.
I'm just breaking that back.
Yes.
So like when you have good processes and you don't follow the processes and then something goes wrong in your day,
Yes.
you can trace it.
You can.
I just wanted to point that out for everybody. Like we have to actively do these for them to work. You have to work it for them to work. So, all right, go ahead.
Totally. So I use tools because I feel we live in a world where, it's like we're trying to get away from technology, but we need technology to help us because it's always in our face. So I use tools. I use Love Tuner, which is breath work, and it's a frequency of 528, which is heart opening, so that you don't let things get to you. I tend to be an extremely sensitive person where things will just really upset me easily. And so that is helpful. The breath work with the 528 frequency. I do a lot of work with New Calm. I don't know if you've heard of New Calm. It's neuroscience as well. And Brain Tap. Have you heard of Brain Tap?
I don't know if it's the same thing. I've heard of tapping.
No, Brain Tap is like a headset. It puts you in a meditative state. Same with New Calm. Think of it as a shortcut to get to meditation. So I do that. I walk my dog every day in nature. I am a writer, so I'm currently writing my second book, and I journal. And often I write a lot of opinion pieces as it relates to wellness. These things are very therapeutic for me, and it's part of my daily schedule. However, when things come into play, like I had dental surgery 10 days ago, so I've had some distractions that take me away from practices that really help to ground me. And I think the key is when I am grounded, I do less of this mindless eating
Mhm.
or eating through emotions when I am grounded. And I think that we have a whole world of really ungrounded people all the time. Like I had a bad day, but I think nowadays, Morgan, and you mentioned portions, you mentioned our food, and we briefly talked about seed oils and we talked about processed food, but our mindset is a little messed up as like a whole world right now.
Mhm. Yeah, on the news last night they were saying 1 out of every 5 children now is obese in America. 1 out of every 5 children obese. And like, I have not double checked that stat, but that was scary to me
That's very
and
scary.
sad to me because these children are going to be growing up and facing the metabolic conditions that 40s and 50-year-olds are going to be facing. They're going to face them when they're 20, and it's just sad. And yeah, like we have a society, I think, that is addicted to technology, addicted to instant gratification. And I
Yes.
think meditation is so powerful and also so uncomfortable because it is for me. I mean, I'll be upfront with you. I don't use the tools though. I try to do like the breath work, um, but I don't use external tools, which would probably be helpful. But man, 5 minutes of meditation feels like an hour to me.
I hear you.
Like, every time I do it, I'm so glad. I've never finished a meditation and be like, well, that was a waste of time.
Yeah.
It's just like a workout, you never finish a workout. You're like, well, I regret doing that. But it's about breaking that rhythm of life, is what I call it, of like that busyness. Every time you're in your bathroom, you're checking the phone. Every time, you're walking down the hall, you're checking the phone. Every time it's
True.
just like, give it a break.
Yeah.
Give it a break.
I was
So,
actually Sorry, go. I was just going to say, I was just writing about how, back in the day when I was working on a project in school. So I was born in 1970. I remember having Encyclopedia Britannicas and those books, and I would have to scour through all these books to get one little piece of information. Now we're pinging our brains constantly. And you just hit Google, you get everything you want in seconds. So imagine what that's doing to our brains. And you said it, like, we must be cognitive and more cognizant that we have to do something to slow ourselves down. So whether it's what you do and you do a traditional meditation, for me, I go for a walk with my dog almost every day, like in the forest, and I do not wear headphones ever. I don't wear headphones. I make sure that I'm present. And then I do one meditation, whatever it is that I can do, whether it's New Calm or Brain Tap. And then Love Tuner is easy because all I have to do is the 6 breaths, and I kind of attune to a frequency that's more opening of the heart.
yeah, I like a daily mindset routine too that I really like. I call it my personal faith formula. But it's a beautiful practice. It's almost like a life vision statement that I teach people how to do, like a wellness specific vision statement. And you want to work in those limiting thoughts and the habits into that. So every morning, and I change mine when I need to, and change it if maybe every other month. But like right now, I'm a compassionate, empathetic, loving, and patient wife, present and engaged mom. I don't snack between meals. I don't overeat. I don't eat my kids. I don't finish my kids' food. I don't go back for seconds. Um, and so there's very pointed things, very intentional messaging that I'm giving my brain first thing in the morning when it's most receptive so that I can kind of check myself throughout the day. But if you don't give yourself those reminders, it's very easy to forget your goals and fall back into the old habits. And, going back to the information on Google, what I like to tell people is you can't Google, like you only Google what you don't know, but you can't Google what you don't know, you don't know. And I think a lot of people don't know what they don't know when it comes to health, when it comes to insulin resistance, when it comes to behavior change. And I think that's really the beauty of a more like comprehensive program that has been vetted and is evidence based and can help you walk and like develop these systems that you don't even know that you don't even know that you need,
Yeah.
So I think Google is such an asset, but can be such a liability if you don't know what you're looking for.
So I think it's important to talk about, like, so for me, I want you to tell me what you think, because what has worked for me was obviously the mindset piece, the sleep piece,
Mhm.
the addressing of the hot flashes. So for me, bioidentical hormones has been, honest to God, life saving, because that in and of itself helped with that cortisol response,
Mhm.
right? And so those are the pieces. And then the way I eat. So I still eat my clean foods. I cook at home. And this is what I try and teach my kids. It's very hard because they're 19 and almost 23. They want instant gratification, right? Uber Eats. Grab Uber Eats,
Mhm.
spend a fortune, don't know what's in that food really. And I cook at least at bare minimum 5 days a week, usually six. And then I'll take a day off where I'm like, okay, I'm not cooking. And it could be simple meals, but it's my choice, my oils, my things, my food, everything that's being made down to the oil that I'm cooking with. And I think that this is important. The way that I eat now, I was explaining, I eat 3 meals a day. I eat 5 hours apart. I know you said four, and I know a lot of people 4 hours. Yeah,
It's just,
4 or
yeah.
5. And then this is really interesting. For me, I believe that having 2 bites of protein before I start a meal is what's keeping my blood sugar stable.
Interesting.
Um, I know that some younger people might be fine with eating their vegetables first. I've tried both ways, and I find having 2 bites of protein first, then going ahead, not having a starch filled meal, but still having starch. Like, yesterday I had like a homemade, it's like a German style potato salad. So there's no mayo, but it's like oil, vinegar, salt, pepper, potatoes. It's like nothing else but that. Um, but it's cold, right? So resistant starch. And I'm sure you know a lot about resistant starch. So you don't have to be afraid of carbohydrates as long as they're the right carbohydrates. Because I did the keto, I did the low carb, I did all of that. And it never really quite led me to where I wanted to be, which was stability, Morgan. I just
Mhm.
want to be stable in my weight. That's it.
And that's totally person specific. I think some people who are very, very insulin resistant, that ketogenic lifestyle could be a game changer. Low carb could be a game changer. Keto is not a sustainable lifestyle for me. Um, and so I don't even, I was like, it's a tool. I might have like a keto meal in a
Yeah.
day, but
Yeah.
I like to leverage fasting for ketosis and some ketogenic meals, but that's not a lifestyle that I want to live. And I think that for starches, the main thing is portion sizes, and having them at the end of the meal does help
Yeah.
to not at the end.
Yeah.
And then if you can be active after you eat carbohydrate to let the muscles use some of that glucose, that can help reduce that insulin spike too. So yeah, I think that anytime you're falling in to an all or nothing mindset, to something that's not sustainable for you, to something that doesn't inherently feel good to you, that should be a flag. Like women have to learn. I'm such an advocate. We have to learn how to listen to our intuition. Just like what you were
I
saying
love it.
earlier, like dig deep, go inside, feel out what's going to work best for you. I think everybody needs to be a very astute, like a very astute student of their intuition. And I like to tell people too, you're studying podcasts, you're reading books, you're learning through courses and doing all this stuff. And that cannot be a distraction from the self-study that's required to change your behavior. So we really need to be good students of our own behavior, of our own emotions, of our thoughts, and spend just as much, if not more time studying ourselves than we do external material. And I think that's really kind of a secret for behavior change is shifting the focus a little bit more internal to study yourself and a little bit less external, seeking advice and opinions and validation from other people.
I love that. And just taking
Yeah.
accountability. Like, if I'm sure you've studied this too. I think women in general, I'm a pretty sensitive person for sure. And I'm also a driven person. So when things don't go my way, it really can affect me. But if I try, like men are infamous for this, right? Like they like to stuff things down. Like, let's just push it down, right? And for me, no, like I have to release it through one of the methods that we talked about or multiple methods. Otherwise, it will manifest in other ways that are unhealthy. And you see that.
Energy.
Yes, yes,
It's just like garbage in your trash that you're not taking out.
yes.
Becomes so toxic inside of you.
Totally. And this is why you also see a lot of women around midlife. Kids are starting to get older. They're starting to be able to take care of themselves a little bit more. They start drinking wine every single night. And I'm not insulting you if you drink wine, please. And I'm not like preaching to anybody, but when you're not cognizant of these habits that aren't serving you, it becomes out of balance. So I'm always like, listen, every once in a blue moon, have the dessert, have the cookie, have that, right? But here's the other thing, you might find this interesting. I never, like, I could say almost never have dessert. People will eat their meal and then they'll wait 2 hours and then they'll have dessert. I never do that 2 hours later. If I'm going to have dessert that day, I'm going to have it immediately after my meal when my blood sugar is already addressing that meal, as opposed to pinging it one more time 2 hours later. What do you think of that?
I completely agree with that. And I think that goes back to how we eat. And I think just one final thing on how we eat is we need to be in a state of calm and rest and digest. Like there are two nervous systems in the body. There's the sympathetic, which is kind of the fight or flight one, keeps us alert. But then there's the rest and digest, that parasympathetic nervous system. And so many people are eating while they're working or eating while they're texting on the phone or looking at social media and not being present and mindful. And that's something else that's in that personal faith formula is, I eat slowly and mindfully because I'm so much less likely to overeat if I'm enjoying every single bite and if I'm eating slowly.
Mm,
And if my digestion is actually on.
yeah.
So because a lot of people that's not, and they're like passing food really fast, or they're getting all stuffed up, and sometimes they think that it's what they're eating, but it could be how they're eating and the state in which they're eating. So I wanted to bring that to light as well. That we want to be eating slowly and mindfully and enjoying every bite and being present to the level of satiety that we have. I think a great tip to leave people with is time your next meal. So next time you have a meal, time yourself start to finish and see how long it takes. and then challenge yourself. I mean, if it's less than 15 minutes, less than 20 minutes, challenge yourself. Can you stretch it out? Can you stretch it out past 10? Can you stretch it out past 15? I don't know. I like a 25-minute meal. I don't know if you've ever timed your meals, but
That's one area that I really stink at because I always work, write, or I'm on my phone. I will fully admit to. And I do 100% agree with you that lack of presence and then shoveling food down your throat, because I'll often make myself some quick scrambled eggs and throw it in a high fiber wrap. And then, throw some peppers in there and then I wolf that down. And then I'm like, I'm still hungry. And then,
yeah.
right? And I think that's really important what you just said, because when you eat slow, when you eat purposefully, and you're just not constantly, I don't watch TV at all during the day. I only watch TV at night, but I do work like actually at my kitchen table. Right now I'm recording from my office, but I love to work from my kitchen table because my dog's there and I have a lot of light, but I 100% do the exact opposite of what you said.
Yeah.
And that's good to change that.
Like even further. So this is subconscious, right? It's a habit.
Yeah.
So to break the habit, I think it's really helpful to break it down into very tiny pieces and very tiny specific goals. So your brain has something to hook onto. So for me, my goals are to swallow each bite before I put the next one in my mouth. And I challenge everybody listening to try to do that in your next meal and see how often you're putting another piece of food in your mouth before the previous one is even down your throat. The other thing that's a nice challenge is to put your utensil down between every bite. So that's like the next level, like slow down eating method. But I really like the one swallow each piece of food before you put another one in your mouth.
That's good. That's easier right now for me, I guess, because I'm missing a tooth, so I can't eat. Yeah, I have to eat only on one side right now. Now, I would like to touch on fiber, as it's almost like a secret weapon against. What do you think of glucose stabilizers? What are your thoughts?
Well, there's differing opinions on it. I really like fiber.
Yeah.
I love non-starchy vegetables. I eat so many roasted vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower,
Yeah.
carrots, sweet potatoes. I love them so much. They're so yummy. I really like to do olive oil, salt and pepper, sometimes like some seasoned flaky salt on top.
Yeah.
And, green beans, sugar snap peas. I think they're all so yummy. And I really like them for a couple reasons. Number one, I like to say they're like rolling out the red carpet for the rest of your food. So the fiber acts almost like as an intestinal barrier to slow the digestion and absorption of what other food you're eating, to blunt that blood sugar response, to slow it down, to spread it out.
Yeah.
And it improves satiety. So it adds bulk to the stomach. And if you're choosing the right options, very low caloric density there. So we can have that feeling of satiety without overeating from a calorie standpoint. And then the third thing is it feeds the gut. So I'm getting more and more into gut health. And I really believe that there are fiber, like there are bacteria in your gut that eat the fiber. So even though we don't digest it, the bacteria eat it. And those good bacteria we need to fight off the bad bacteria in our gut. And so I think those are the three main benefits of fiber. I love fiber. 20 to 30 grams a day usually.
Yeah, but then there's a difference between soluble and insoluble too, right?
Yep. So the insoluble is going to be the stuff that will more so, they work together too. So most foods have soluble and insoluble fiber intact. And they form almost this matrix where the insoluble fiber is kind of like a crosshatch. The soluble fiber is like the little balls to plug it. And that's how that intestinal barrier is created. So if you're just having like Metamucil as a supplement, you're not getting both types of fiber. So I think that's why it's very important to get fiber from real whole food and sources that don't irritate your gut. So a lot of the non-starchy vegetables are going to be safe options, but some people have like a lectin sensitivity or an oxalate sensitivity.
Yeah.
There again, bioindividuality there. But yeah, the soluble fiber and insoluble fiber, they do have differing benefits. And the insoluble fiber is going to be the one that's more beneficial for the gut health, like the resistant starches, that kind of stuff, because they're not digested. They make it all the way down there. The
Yes.
soluble fiber is going to be the stuff that more so helps kind of reduce, like it creates that gelatinous
Yes.
sensation. It like reduces that absorption of other nutrients or
Yeah.
slows their absorption.
Yeah. So you like fiber. What about, there's a ton now of these glucose stabilizers on the market that are supplements. What are your thoughts on those? And are there any that you think, because I have one that I know and I use, because I eat that the way that we talked about. I eat a certain way, but I still take a glucose stabilizer. And I was able to get, by the way, I was able to get my HbA1c down to a 5, which is
What do you take? I'm kind of curious.
they're actually my sponsor for my podcast.
Okay.
They're called Sigrid, and it's Cypor, and it is a special type of silica.
Okay.
It works. They actually they Yeah, it's a different type of silica because it's nanoparticles. It's very, very safe. There's other silicas that have been questioned in terms of safety for kidneys, not this kind. I just want to make sure people get that. People always research everything. I have tried.
I trust you. I know you're doing the work, but I think when people ask me questions like this, they're slicing hairs. And there's bigger fish to fry often when it comes to dietary and lifestyle changes. And like, are you going to take berberine or cinnamon or all these things? I like to say you cannot circumvent the necessary lifestyle changes,
Agree.
mindset changes required to keep those blood sugars low.
I agree.
So I kind of try to stay away from the supplement world. I know about them. I can give some recommendations. I always say run it by your doctor. But whenever possible, I just like to give like the natural, like the most whole food, natural advice because I think that gives people more bang for their buck because it's free. So that's my take on.
I agree.
Supplements go.
I agree. And the only other thing I will say for anybody who's listening, unless your physician is an integrative medicine physician, do not go to your physician for therapeutic grade supplementation advice. That's all I'm going to say.
They don't know anything.
They don't know anything.
No offense to doctors.
No offense. No.
It's not in their toolbox. And
Exactly.
An episode of Exercise Induced Asthma. We went to a pulmonologist. They're like, here's some inhalers. I was like, you're a specialist. This is really the best you got for me. Like, are there other natural options? And she's like, well, that's just not in my toolbox. And I'm like,
no.
So we've pretty successfully treated that asthma naturally with being very tight on his sugar intake, which is difficult for children. He's very tight on the seed oil because both of those contribute to high levels of inflammation. And he just had a huge bout of bronchitis a couple of years ago that triggered this spasmic asthma stuff. And so we're like, all right, if this is about inflammation,
yes,
his inflammation as low as possible. And I think so many people are just like, they have this patriarchal model for medicine, like doctor always knows best. And that may not be the case. It takes 17 to 25 years for evidence to trickle down into medicine practice. Like,
yes.
Can be retired. So I think that that's why these conversations and finding really good evidence-based and like information that's relevant and pertinent to you and your specific situation is important.
Yeah.
So that you can be the self-advocate that is unfortunately required in this day and age. I do not go to the doctor unless it's absolutely necessary. Like maybe once a year I take my kids.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. I think when I had a baby 4 years ago was the last time I went to a doctor because I don't believe that they have anything to give me, and I don't have a problem at this point that I need help solving. Like, I think Western medicine is really good in emergencies. It's really good
Yes.
at certain things. You know, if somebody does get sick, if they get injured, like, of course I'm going to be so appreciative of that, but I know their place. And if I really had a health issue that I needed to get to the bottom of, I'm going to a functional medicine doctor,
Yes.
or I'm an integrated medicine doctor, because I want people with more tools in their toolbox than what I know a Western trained physician without additional skills has, unfortunately.
I'm glad the conversation went here because I think it's important to note that everything that I personally talk about and that I do is for proactive health and prevention, those two things. And while, I do a lot to support gut health, nutritionists do not diagnose, cure, or heal disease. However, there are many symptoms that happen so far before, which is insulin resistance, before diabetes, before heart disease, before any kind of major health issue. You have a lot, and we've given you so many options in this conversation. So, even still, what's interesting is you were mentioning the asthma. So, I had the post COVID I can't remember if it was 6 or 8 weeks cough. I had COVID and then I had the cough. And all that was given to me were an assortment of puffers.
Yeah.
And then finally, I'm like, I'm going to take, and so I took matters into my own hands. I took an acetylcysteine. So, one of my expertise, so this is the other thing. NAC is what helped me finally. But what I am going to say is that most general physicians know nothing about therapeutic grade supplementation. That's all. They just don't. So, and a lot of times there's a lot of things that can help support your wellness, let's just say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, again, it's person specific. And if I had an issue, I'd be looking into that. But
Yeah.
I do take like a daily multivitamin, like a prenatal. I take fish oil.
Yeah.
And then depending on, like, sometimes I'll do creatine as well. But I keep the supplements very minimal because I don't want to spend the money on it, because I don't think
It's expensive. It's expensive.
it's healthy enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I think as you age, I do believe that people need more when they get older. And there are definitely, I've recorded some podcasts about commonly known deficiencies, especially as we age. And I do believe that it compounds. So as we age, so let's say chromium, maybe you've been deficient in chromium. We know chromium is a mineral. It's really, really supportive of healthy blood sugar levels. But maybe that deficiency didn't bother you for many, many years. But then all of a sudden, it's compounded your deficiency in chromium along with menopause, along with not sleeping well, right? So, it could help to support.
And I would turn to those supplemental options before a synthetic medication.
Yeah.
So I think there's the role there too. Like, okay, your doctor prescribed metformin. Maybe you're more open to taking berberine, chromium,
Yeah.
magnesium, that kind of stuff. I think that obviously do it in conjunction with your physician knowing about it. You need proper blood sugar monitoring so
Yes.
that you don't like overshoot. And I think that's the best role that they can play, is like, let's see if there's a more natural option to supplement the lifestyle. And that's why I call it a supplement. They're supplementing your lifestyle.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Wow. I could talk to you forever, and we are over an hour. So please let us know where we can find you, and let me know if there's anything you want to mention before we close off.
Yeah. Well, our website is zibly.com. I don't say it as cool as you do, but zibli.com. And we have a 12-week online course and coaching program that teaches you these systems to keep insulin low. And that opens up in September of 24. We open it a couple times a year. And so that's our next open enrollment period. But we have all sorts of resources on our YouTube channel, on our podcast. You can just Google my name and it should come up for a YouTube or podcast.
That's amazing. And then you're on Instagram, Facebook, under
Instagram, Facebook, I'm Dr. Morgan Multi.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. And I love the way the conversation kind of touched on all aspects of insulin resistance.
That's what I try to do, because you can't just have tunnel vision towards one area. Again, like, the cure must match the cause.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind for anybody listening. You got to get to the root cause of what's driving your high levels of insulin and solve that solution, that problem.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Morgan. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to share it with someone you know might benefit. And always remember, when you rate, review, subscribe, you help to support my content and help me to keep going and bringing these conversations to you each and every week. Join me next week for a new topic, new guest, new exciting conversations to help you live your best life.